All right, let's dive into the story of Barry White, the smooth singing legend. You know, the guy with that deep, velvety voice that could make anyone swoon? Yeah, that's him.
I woke up one morning when I was 14 and
You woke up?
I spoke to my mother, and I scared both of us.
So Barry wasn't just a music icon, he was a whole vibe. He had this way of painting emotions with his melodies that stuck with you long after the song ended. But behind all that smoothness, there was some real-life drama. Fast forward to July 4th, 2003, at Cedar Sinai Medical Center in LA, and Barry White was pronounced dead. The world was shook. I mean, this guy was a legend, and news of his passing sent shockwaves through the music scene and his massive fan base. But let's rewind a bit to one of his last gigs in Sydney, Australia, back in 2000. The setup was a bit weird, with the stage in the middle and the audience all around. So when Barry came out, half the crowd could only see his back, which didn't exactly set the mood, you know? Instead of cheers, there were boos, and that had to sting. This was Barry White we're talking about, the guy who usually had crowds eating out of the palm of his hand. But to really get what made Barry tick, we gotta go back to his roots. Born Barry Eugene Carter on September 12, 1944, in Galveston, Texas, he had a tough upbringing. Raised by his mom in South Central LA, he and his brother Daryl grew up in the Watts neighborhood, just trying to make it in a world that wasn't always kind. So you see, there's a lot more to Barry White than just his smooth tunes. He had struggles, he had heartache, but through it all, he left a mark on the music world that'll never fade. So here's the scoop on Barry White's early days. He grew up vibing to his mom's classical tunes, banging away on the piano trying to match what he heard on those records. While his mom schooled him on piano, he was belting it out in the church choir. His first crack at fame? Playing piano for Jesse Bellin at just 11. But Barry was quick to clear the air about that, saying he didn't write or arrange the song. He thought the whole thing got blown out of proportion by nosy journalists. Even as a little dude, Barry was all about the music. He'd glue himself to the radio, soaking in every beat and making those songs his own. Music was more than just tunes to him. It was like a soundtrack to his life, sparking memories and emotions. But things took a wild turn when Barry hit his teens. His voice did a total 180, going from squeaky kid to deep and smooth practically overnight. His mom was shook, but in a good way. She saw it as a sign that her boy was growing up. But growing up in the hood wasn't all roses for Barry. He and his brother Daryl got mixed up with some rough crowds, and Snoop Dogg himself said Barry had some serious street cred. He was running with gangs like the Gladiators and the Slayon, getting into all kinds of trouble. It was a rocky road for Barry White, with music pulling him one way and the streets pulling him the other. But little did he know, those early struggles would shape him into the legend we all know and love. So Barry White wasn't just into music growing up, he was also knee-deep in the street scene. He rolled with the Roaming 20s crew before leveling up to the Businessmen Gang, the hottest crew in Southwest LA. His mom, though, was all about steering him clear of that life. She begged him to quit, worried he'd end up in a world of trouble. But Barry wasn't having it. He was convinced they weren't going down that path. He even snapped at her once, like, "How do you think we're out here at night without getting jacked?" Sure, he didn't spill all the deets about his criminal gigs, but let's just say he was busy, boosting cars left and right, claiming he swiped over 1,000 of them. And then there was the chaos of the 65 Watts riots. Barry wasn't just watching from the sidelines, he was right in the mix, admitting he was part of the scene. Those riots, man, they were intense. Police clashing with residents, fires blazing everywhere. Some folks even say it was fueled by gangs like the ones Barry was in. But then, everything changed when he got busted for stealing tires at just 16. Locked up and listening to Elvis, Barry had an epiphany. He had to turn his life around. After 7 months inside, he swore he'd never go back. And when his buddies asked him to join their band, it was like the universe was saying, "This is it, Barry." So in 1960, he took a chance on music, and the rest is history. Barry White's music journey kicked off from some pretty ordinary beginnings and some rough teenage years. But you know what? His talent and love for music were undeniable, and that's what kept him moving forward. At just 16, he cut his first record with a crew called the Upfronts, dropping a track called Little Girl on a local label called Lumtone Records. The crew didn't hit it big, so Barry hustled, working for a bunch of indie labels, doing artist stuff and whatnot. As he got older, he dove deeper into the music scene, grinding for various indie labels in LA. It was during this hustle that big shots like Bob Keane, who discovered Sam Cooke, took notice of Barry's skills. Keane even offered him a gig doing A&R stuff, giving him $40 a week to scout talent for his labels. Barry thought about being a recording artist himself for a sec, cutting a track called All in the Run of a Day for Bronco Records, but he stuck with the A&R hustle. One of the first groups he worked with was The Versatile, later known as The Fifth Dimension. But Barry's real big break came when he teamed up with singer Viola Wills to drop the soulful hit, Lost Without the Love of My Guy. That track shot up the charts, landing Barry a fat raise to $60 a week. He also started jamming with the Bobby Fuller 4 and scoring big with hits like I Feel Love Coming On. Soon, Barry became a hot ticket, raking in $400 a week and making waves with his unique style and killer voice. Even when Bronco went bust, Barry didn't sweat it. He kept grinding, thanks to some help from his buddy Gene Page, who hooked him up with gigs and loans when times got tough. So, like 3 years later, Paul Politti from Bronco hit him up, saying Nunes was keen on starting some business gig together. Turns out Nunes was already cooking up some tracks for an album idea he had. Meanwhile, White was busy with this new girl group. They were total rookies, hadn't even sniffed the pro scene yet. But man, they rehearsed like crazy for almost a year. White ended up penning Walking in the Rain with The One I Love, drawing inspo from chats with one of the singers, Flawed and James, who later became his second wife. White dubbed the group Love Unlimited. They were a bunch of talented cats who shared his vibe for making soulful tunes. Together, they set off on this musical adventure that had folks everywhere vibing. Their album, From a Girl's Point of View, really put them on the map, showing off their mad skills and White's knack for crafting tunes that hit you right in the feels. Their mix of soul and R&B, along with killer performances, struck a chord with fans, making them big shots in the music biz. Then there's Larry Nunes, who took their record to Russ Reagan over at Uni, the label owned by MCA. From a Girl's Point of View went platinum, but then Reagan bailed for 20th Century, leaving White in the lurch. He was done with Uni and wanted to switch gears, thinking of working with some male artist. He even laid down a few demos of himself jamming on the keys, but Nunes had other ideas. He was dead set on White being the face of these tracks. They went back and forth for days until Nunes finally talked him into it, though White wasn't totally sold. When the label paperwork came around, he was gonna go by White Heat. But in '73, I've Got So Much to Give dropped, marking Barry White's first solo album. It was a game changer, showing off his insane vocal range and how he could pour his soul into every note. And that hit single, I'm Gonna Love You Just a Little More Baby, well, that just cemented his rep as a musical powerhouse. But Barry wasn't done yet. He put together the Love Unlimited Orchestra, showing off his knack for making killer instrumentals. Their track Love Theme was a smash hit, bagging White a fancy BMI award for over 3 million copies sold. It was pure musical magic, proving Barry could slay any genre. Over the years, he kept dropping hit after hit, each album showcasing his unique style and that velvety voice of his. Classics like Stone Gone, Barry White Sings for Someone You Love, and Let the Music Play made him a legend in the game. Oh, and let's not forget his work on the soundtrack for The Together Brothers. That flick got a second wind on home video thanks to Barry's smooth tunes. His studio band was stacked with legends like Ray Parker Jr., Nathan East, and Wilton Felder from the Crusaders. With cats like that backing him up, it's no wonder Barry White became an icon in the music world. Man, Barry White's hot streak seemed unstoppable, but then Russ Reagan and his buddy Hosea Wilson bounced to the 20th century, leaving White with management he wasn't too thrilled about. After fulfilling his contract with a couple more albums, White dipped from the label. He then scored a sweet deal with CBS Records, launching his own label, Unlimited Gold. His crew included Love Unlimited, the Love Unlimited Orchestra, and this young cat Danny Pearson, who made waves with What's Your Sign Girl. As Barry's career rolled on, he kept evolving, linking up with talented folks like Glody and James, who added serious flavor to his tunes. They even dropped a duet album called Barry and Glodine. Together, they cooked up hits like You're the Only One for Me and Let's Make Tonight an Evening to Remember, striking a chord with fans worldwide. Barry's success didn't slow down in the 90s. He switched gears to A&M Records and dropped gems like The Icon Is Love, which blew up big time. That album had bangers like Practice What You Preach, showcasing Barry's raw emotion and smooth delivery. Barry's music wasn't just catchy tunes, it hit you right in the feels. He had this authentic vibe that resonated with folks from all walks of life. Even as music trends shifted, Barry stayed true to himself, keeping his music timeless and relevant. And let's talk about his impact. Barry wasn't just making music, he was shaping the industry. His soulful melodies and captivating voice earned him Grammys and cemented his status as a legend. His influence? It's everywhere, inspiring countless artists who followed in his footsteps. But behind the scenes? Yeah, life wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Barry. Despite his musical triumphs, his personal life was a roller coaster. But man, his legacy? It's still alive and kicking, reminding us why Barry White will always be the king of soul. Barry White's life wasn't just about the music. He had his share of ups and downs. Back in the 70s, when his music was hitting the charts, Barry decided to dip his toes into acting. He showed up on the big screen as Brother Bear in this controversial flick called Skin, where he flexed his versatile skills and left everyone impressed with his voice and his vibe. He even popped up as Samson in some live-action bits. But Barry wasn't satisfied just there. He made some memorable cameos on TV shows like The Simpsons and Ally McBeal, adding more layers to his multi-talented persona. He was all over the place, popping up in dream sequences and saving the day with his deep bass voice.
Mr. White, can we borrow you for a minute?
Anything for a lady. Don't bother the snakes. Leave all the snakes alone. Yeah. Oh, babe. I mean, my darling, I can't get enough of your love, babe.
He was a big fan of The Simpsons and even reached out to the crew to score a spot on the show. He made a second appearance in Krusty Gets Canceled and even did some commercial gigs, like playing a bus driver in a Prodigy ad and voicing a rabbit for a salad dressing mix commercial. Oh, and don't forget those car commercials, like the ones for Oldsmobile and Jeep.
When you want to cruise with the best, do a Jeep style. Now drop your top in the Wrangler. In my world, affordability and versatility have become my classic style. And oh, baby, come on, experience my mellow grooves and mellow mood.
Now, Barry's personal life? That was juicy too. He was married twice. First to his childhood sweetheart Mary, with whom he had 4 kids. Even though things got rocky, their love story was one for the books. After they split, Barry found love again with singer Glodian James, and they had 4 kids together too. Despite parting ways, they stayed legally hitched until Barry passed away in 2003. Barry White didn't always get the props he deserved. Sometimes, he got the short end of the stick. The media, and even some fans, poked fun at him, labeling his music as trashy and making him the butt of their jokes. But you know what? Barry wasn't fazed. He even made fun of himself on The Simpsons, showing he could handle a bit of ribbing. In interviews, he brushed off labels like being seen as a symbol, saying it didn't bother him one bit. "I'm Barry White," he declared. "Call me whatever you want. I'm still me." He knew he had haters, but he didn't let it get to him. But when it came to his last show, things took a rough turn. Fans started booing him, and it's tough to understand why without knowing about his health struggles. Starting in 1995, he battled high blood pressure, weight issues, and kidney failure, which took a toll on his performance. Sadly, his fans didn't seem to care about his health problems, and Barry likely passed away with memories of their ridicule instead of their praise. Barry White's health struggles just kept getting worse, no matter what he tried. Despite his ailments, he pushed through and kept performing. One of his last gigs was in Sydney, Australia in 2000, but he was in rough shape. He was dealing with edema, which made his legs and ankles swell up like crazy. It made it hard for him to stand and really give it his all. The concert setup didn't help either. The venue had this weird horseshoe seating arrangement, and more than half the 4,000 fans couldn't even see him properly. Some folks got frustrated and started booing. His manager later spilled the beans that Barry had to perform sitting down, which only ticked off the crowd even more. They wanted to see him rocking out on the piano, not stuck in a chair. Despite his best efforts, Barry just couldn't keep up. He battled kidney failure from chronic diabetes and high blood pressure for years. He was waiting for a kidney transplant when things took a turn for the worse in May 2003. A severe stroke hit him hard, forcing him into retirement. A few months later, he passed away at Cedar Sinai Medical Center, leaving behind a painful legacy for his fans. But man, those fans, they knew how to pay tribute. Over 100 of them gathered in Los Angeles to celebrate Barry's life and music, dancing to his tunes and remembering the legend he was. Barry might have left this world too soon, but his music, it lives on, reminding us all why he'll always be the king of soul. In the end, Barry White's legacy isn't just about his chart-topping hits or his unforgettable voice. It's about the man behind the music, the one who faced health struggles with unwavering determination, the one who brought joy to millions with his soulful tunes. Despite the challenges he faced, Barry White's spirit lives on through his timeless music, touching the hearts of fans old and new. So here's to Barry White, the King of Soul, whose legacy will continue to inspire and uplift for generations to come.